Well, shit. Well, it seems that the algorithm that can't tell the difference between a real company and a fictitious company. We were reading Subsidiaries Pentex verbatim, and that got our video taken down. And does that mean everything we talked about with Magadon that was true? Get your hands on subsidiaries. Pentext are thinking like you're thinking. There are voices within your walls or eyes within your walls. Know like they know what they know. They just get this information. This is literally Fahrenheit 451. Okay, all memeing aside, well that sucks, but this does have me thinking. Werewolf, when that came out in the 90s, 2000s, during its time, that was considered to be a very left leaning, very liberal game. And us reading its pages got one of our videos taken down. We were not paraphrasing at all. That was just in the book. And it's got me wondering. I've seen this sentiment happen over the course of us making videos on Werewolf the Apocalypse, us Galliard Group, and I've noticed that a lot of people that call themselves Werewolf fans don't actually like the game. It's either because of the story or the mechanics, and a lot of praise sent to Werewolf 5th Edition is just, I like it because it's not the old editions, where it's a really poor reason to like something, but that does have me wondering, is this game still liberal? Now, I know that might be a bit of a weird question. I mean, this is World Darkness. It's got a pretty left leaning fan base. Well, really, every tabletop game does, but this is strange to me because does the content of the book, of every book, still line up with liberal values? Well, let's look at the game itself. This game is about you being a werewolf fighting against a satanic entity, the Worm, for the survival of the planet, that being Gaia. That sounds like a pretty, stereotypical hippie idea for a game or a tabletop property, and it kind of is, but let's look a little closer at some of this stuff. On the political compass sense, is this game more authoritarian or libertarian? And I wanted to say libertarian because you're wolves in nature. How libertarian can that get? But looking at some of the tribes, with the Shadow Lords, the Silverfangs, the Actena, the Wendigo, and even the more wild tribes like the Black Furies and the Red Talons have some pretty authoritarian, pretty nasty policies within their tribes. And the Glasswalkers, the tribe that is based off of cyberpunk culture, is probably the worst out of all of them. They started off as a bunch of libertarians, all of them fighting for their own city fathers back when they were the Iron Riders. But then Cockroach comes in, decrees that no, we're not doing this anymore. You're making a corporate empire in my name. And then the Glasswalkers became the Glasswalkers, and now they vie for world domination. You go from being a cyberpunk, you go from being Johnny Silverhand to being Arasaka and Militech. To, pretty ironic, isn't it? But as for the other ideas in the book, well, we know today, just look at the world around you, that in regards to America, the parties have flipped. The left is completely different today than the left it was back into the 2000s and the 90s, and same with the right, where you're beginning to see the values slowly change. I mean, take what we said about Magadon. Big Pharma was the devil to the left for years, but now the left sees it as a sacred cow, and you are to be canceled if you criticize it, and that blows my mind because you really think these guys care for you? They just see you for money. And it's the right that looks at Big Pharma and demands they leave them alone. So it's a little strange, and just looking at the content of Subsidiaries Pentax, well, you have companies that either side would hate. I mean, the left hates big oil, the right hates crappy beer. There's something to hate for everybody there, but I want to say because of the change in sentiments towards big pharma, this game has started to lean a little bit towards the right. You want to continue? We can continue. Now, I gotta ask you, what are the two most popular tribes? It's pretty easy. It's the Geta Fenris and it's the Fianna. Easy, easy, easy. Those are the easiest to understand. And they all have a lot of pretty conservative values. They all believe in cultural history, national identity, a stable family unit, living in the wilderness, making their own alcohol, having strong religious values, even if it's pagan. You look at Gaia and you want to consider that to be a replacement for God with a capital G, you're tipping a little bit to the right, but what about the more liberal tribes like the Black Furies? The Black Furies, for its day, that was a pretty radical idea. Having an entire tribe where it's nothing but women, and there are women that stick it to the man, sometimes in a literal sense, and declare that their bodies are beautiful and that nobody but them should have authority over it. That's amazing. Pretty cool idea. But would you exactly call that far left leaning today? Feminism today doesn't really have a side, and it's not so much a feminism so much as feminisms, multiple ideas under one category. And when you read the Black Furies, it comes across as a little um, modest at times. A lot of these Black Furies, I can see them telling me to pull up my pants and find Jesus. I dressed up for this video, so I've already done that. But it's so eclectic. You have the sisterhood, and then you have the inner calyx. You have libertarian lesbians, and you have authoritarian misandrists. So, not really with the Black Furies, and you could, of course, point at the Children of Gaia to an extent. Sure, when you look at the Servants of Unicorn and just the Children of Gaia in general, sure, that's pretty hippie, but you look at the Anointed Ones and you look at the Patient Deed. Absolutely not. That is not something I would say is a far left leaning tribe. Absolutely not. It's like we described in our video on the Children of Gaia. It's two different tribes under one name by this point. They're so different when it comes to camps. It's incredible when you look at them. Once again, it's a very eclectic blend. And how about villains? The villains of Werewolf. Well, you have the worm. That's a satanic archetype. Okay, not really a side there. Both sides pretty much have satanic archetypes of their own. Black Spiral Dancers, a death cult. Once again, not really partisan. You have Pentex. Well, granted, a lot of people hate some companies. Seventh Generation, a disgusting group of cheese pizza connoisseurs. I say that with quotation marks, cheese pizza, who are determined to get their net sauce. Once again, quotations. Pretty far right for a villain. I mean, that lines up with modern day conservative values, especially with after reading what the seventh generation does. Of course, I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want my voice associated with those words, but ugh, pretty nasty. But I really don't see the seventh generation being as villainized in the eyes of the left. I mean, when it comes to child sacrifice, which is what the seventh generation does in game, yeah, but everything leading up to that, well, that's not exactly villainized anymore. I mean, yeah, consent is key when it comes to seventh generation, but when you go to like a very like laconic, boiled down kind of view, not really something the left villainizes anymore. That's not an indictment, that's just changing with the times. And then above the worm, you have the technocracy. These are in game high tech sorcerers who want to control the world. They invented communism, they invented globalism, they invented the idea of World Bank and world currency, and they want people to get cybernetic implants so they can start controlling the minds of people. I don't think. I don't really think that's that much of a liberal villain anymore either. Once again, most of this is subjective. This is, at the end of the day, a working theory I have, just noticing a shift in conversation when it comes to Werewolf the Apocalypse. Of course, you could prove me wrong. I would love it if you would try to prove me wrong. Go into the comments below. I want to hear what you have to say. But this is just what I'm seeing, and I don't really think this game is that far to the left anymore. And looking at the concept too, like you look at your gnosis or gnosis system, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and you get that by submitting yourself to a higher entity in prayer. I don't really think that's much of a leftist value anymore, considering how atheism has permeated the left. And given how fundamental and religious a lot of the werewolves are, I think this game is a little bit more conservative than people really give it credit for anymore online. So, what am I ultimately getting at? Well, this is just really an observation at the end of the day. Just something that I think I've seen with the change in geopolitics and the change of cultural values. Just everything that Werewolf and World of Darkness as a whole used to be in the 90s, that doesn't really reflect the age that we live in now. And you see a lot of people, I mean, I'm partially guilty of this myself, trying to combine the politics of then with the politics of now. And I think we're trying to do that because Werewolf 5th edition didn't give us an answer. Yeah, none of us are happy about that. But it's still interesting to look at. Now, with that in mind, is the rest of World of Darkness kind of liberal? Well, I don't really think it is either. You look at Vampire, you look at Mage. Mage, oh my gosh, with Mage. There is such an eclectic blend of ideology that you can have within a single party, within a single chronicle in your game, and none of those games take a definite side, especially with some of the values of the clans. I mean, you want to have a Bruja and a Banu Hakim and a Zimichi in the same room, and watch how well they'll handle politics with each other. You also have Wraith, where yeah, it's about a undead underworld society that runs off of slavery. So it doesn't exactly endorse slavery. It's not exactly focused on the Imperium itself, but still something to note. Changeling, well, that entire game is about going outside and touching grass. So maybe leave politics out, changing entirely, huh? But at the end of the day, this is more just a working theory I have. I'm trying to figure out why we have so many Werewolf fans that just allegedly don't like Werewolf or are outspoken about their dislike for Werewolf. So, is this game still as liberal as it used to be? In a modern day, no. If you were playing this back in the 90s and 2000s, yes, the answer would be a hard yes, but now, I mean, 30 years, almost 30 years after the original release of these games, no, no, not anymore. I'd say these games land more in the center than anything else. It's not to the left, it's not to the right. And I think the reason why so many people get upset with Werewolf in particular is that they go into it thinking that this is going to be a very liberal, left leaning game, and then it turns out it's not, and it never has been that far. And then they try changing it and modifying it to fit the idea that they thought it was going to be, but don't do that with this game. If you take out anything in Werewolf, it's a completely different game. Just leave the game as is. It's still a miracle that this was made at all, and White Wolf did a fantastic job. And really, don't go into this game with politics in mind. It's a very political game, but at the same time, politics don't have to be everything you talk about at your table. It's just something to think about, and something I'd love to hear from you about. And let's go see if we get that Pentex video fixed. Hmm.